Good evening. Tonight I'm going to be giving you guys some backstory to the novel Night, written by Elie Wiesel. Today we're going to be talking about some of the background, the historical background that occurred, so that way you guys have a better understanding of what's taking place during your reading. So first of all, World War II is when the Holocaust took place. It occurred from 1939 to 1945. During 1941 through 1945 is when the U.S. entered the war. We didn't enter the war until Japan bombed us in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Up until that point, we were basically keeping our distance and we were isolating ourselves from the rest of the world. Many of the Holocaust camps, the concentration camps, were spread throughout. They weren't really in Germany per se, but they were in other countries like Poland, and the most famous of those was Auschwitz, which was killed the most amount of Jewish people, not just Jewish people, but predominantly Jewish people. Elie, again, it is a memoir, so it is a true story about a certain time period in his life, which is his experience with the concentration camp. His family and him were born in Sziget, which is a town in Romania. So again, he is not from Germany. He is not from Poland. He gets actually transported to another country, basically, to be put into the concentration camp. He was 13 years old at the very beginning, but again, multiple years go by. But in the first chapter of the book, but he's 13 when he's describing his life in Sziget before he gets transferred over. But he is 15 when he actually gets put into the concentration camp. So many of your guys' ages. So again, just kind of put yourselves in that kind of train of thought. Something that you guys are going to see in chapter 1 is they keep referring to, in fact, the first sentence refers to Moish the Beadle. A beadle was a figure in the church, almost kind of like a church officer. He wasn't like a police officer, but it would be somebody who would help out. They would help perform different religious functions, and they would help with different events, basically. In this case, Moish was interested and got Elie interested in the mystic or magical arts of Judaism, which again, Judaism is the religion for Jewish people. It's called Kabbalah, which is what Moish again studied. This shows that Elie was more of an idealist. He was much more into the magic, mystical, kind of out there kind of things about Judaism. When he was younger, as you'll see throughout the book, he struggles with his faith up until the very end, where he no longer believes in religion or God. So that's something that, again, we're going to see that slow transformation as it goes on, which is, again, understandable in his situation. Again, so we'll see a lot of terrible things occur. It actually takes place most of this takes place in 1944, so the last year of the war. We'll see a little bit of the first few years, but those are only going to be really in the first few pages. Everything else is going to be in the last year of the war. And even though he wasn't there for the entirety of the war, he probably wouldn't have survived had he been there for the entirety. But unfortunately, we will see a lot of bad things happen to him in that 1 year period. Another thing for you guys to know is that ghettos are a place, a part of the city that they had almost taped off, basically, that they had guarded, that people were on curfews. They would basically make sure that everybody was concentrated in the ghettos. It was basically the pre-concentration camp. So in their hometowns, they would already probably be in a quote-unquote Jewish community already. But once they were in there, they were basically put on curfew. They weren't allowed to leave. We'll see in the very beginning, one of the characters gets taken by the police because he was a foreigner. And you'll see what happens to him when you read chapter 1. Moish the Beadle is an important character because he is symbolic of the warnings that came about during the concentration camps. What's significant is that when he was ignored, and this is a big theme throughout the story, he tries to warn people about what the Germans are doing, and people ignore him. And unfortunately, when they ignore him, they don't like really see the seriousness of what's going on. Kind of reminds you of like what's going on when people aren't taking the serious warnings of how we need to stay indoors and shelter in place. So again, sometimes it's good to listen to what people are saying, especially like the experts and stuff and what's going on. And in this case, Moish was an expert in what was going on, as you'll read in chapter 1. On page 12, another just kind of reference for you, a word you'll probably not know, but on page 12 it makes reference to Shabbat, which is the Jewish holiday, basically where they got their laws, the Torah, part of the Bible, basically for them. The Torah is like their set of laws, so that's just a celebration that they have. It also talks about how he studied the Talmudic treatise, which is, again, just another religious text in Judaism. In the second chapter, we are first introduced to Auschwitz. We come to it at the very end. Again, it's the most infamous concentration camps during World War II. Over 1 million people were murdered there, and out of those 900,000 of them were Jewish. So obviously, they killed other people too, prisoners of war, people from like different ethnicities, even people with different sexual orientation. They killed gay people because, again, it conflicted with their beliefs. So again, homophobia is definitely something that people should not take light of. It's something that has historically people who are gay have been persecuted. So it's important to note that that was the case there too. When they were taken from their towns, which we'll see again in chapter 2, they are forced onto train like cattle. They're shoved in. A lot of people, the conditions are obviously very bad because they don't see them as human. So unfortunately, people die. People who know where they're going, as you'll see with one woman, freak out because they know where they're going, and other people like kind of try to stop them. And unfortunately, the Germans were really good about making people stop. They basically would shoot somebody and say, like, you're in charge of keeping somebody from escaping, and if you don't keep them from escaping, we'll shoot you. So again, they unfortunately pitted the prisoners against each other just for survival. So going forward, we're going to basically see how life was like within the walls of the concentration camp. I will be posting more videos like this to help you guys kind of have a better understanding of what's going on. And I hope you guys follow along with the book. Obviously, if you have any questions, I will be available Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 to noon. And you can always send me remind messages. But again, this is a very important text to read, and I think it's one that you should all take seriously. And it is very interesting, but it's very sad too. So thank you guys, and have a good night.